All right, today is that quarterly video I love to film where I talk about all the series that I have read, continued, finished in the previous season, so summer, and what I hope to get to this fall. And it's the end of the year, and life's a little busy right now, so I'm trying to have options that excite me, but also not stress myself out, and honestly, I'm feeling very accomplished with what I did in the summer, and we'll get into that. But also, before we keep going, I love how shiny my curls are today. I don't know why it's like this, and I mean, I think I know why. It's finally not like 1,000,000 degrees humidity. Curls and humidity is just so hard. I don't like things super dry, but my hair is never better than when it's super dry. Truly. Anyways, we're gonna get into it. I have finished, I believe, if I wrote down on my little notepad, like 6 series, continued 1, started 2 more, and then we'll get into my TBR. And if I have any should you reads, which I do for quite a few of these, not all of them, but quite a few, we'll get into that. So starting with one that I finished, this is not really in any chronological order. It was just in order of, I went and watched the old video and started writing things down, but I don't even know if I wrote things down in order of that video. It's a little, my notes are a little chaotic, but it's all there. And that's all that's important. But first, I'm caught up on Red Rising. I have a should you read for that. There will eventually be a live show for Lightbringer. It's just been really hard for us to get our schedules to all coincide. We're all very busy right now with plans, and we've just all been busy on different weekends from each other. So that'll happen eventually. I mean, it's not like there's a rush. We're not getting the 4th book for a minute, but I finished it just as I planned, and I have a should you read for it. If you want to know my thoughts, I also still have my spoiler-free review of the 1st book if you want to just know thoughts on the 1st book. And yeah, I'm really glad because Lightbringer definitely made Dark Age worth it for me. That's like the too long didn't watch review is like, Dark Age is my least favorite for sure. It's really gratuitously long and fatiguing for me and not enough highs to balance the lows. And Lightbringer was kind of back in that Red Rising groove of there are lows, but there are also highs and the payoff, and it was good. Still probably a bit long. I do prefer Red Rising when it was like a 400 to 600 page book instead of like 600 to 800 pages, whatever they are these days. But yeah, that was fun. I also finished the Dandelion Dynasty, and I had my interview with Ken Liu. So you have that interview, and there's also my should you read for that series on this channel. I still think about it fondly, just how much I enjoyed reading it. Maybe I should reread it. I want to reread all things most of the time, but I just love the project of that, the intention of it, its scope. Oh, it's so sweeping. It's unlike anything I've ever read before. And I've been reading fantasy for a while. And in some ways it is familiar, but in other ways I'm like, is it fantasy? And we do discuss that in the interview. If you want to know how Ken Liu, classifies his series, you can check that out. But I finished that. So that was a big chunky series that I wanted to finish this year that I did this summer. So that was exciting. Also recently finished the Protectorate series with Catalyst Gate. We have 2 live shows for that available if you're in my Patreon. We have one for the 1st book, which the 1st book has like reveals. So it was fun to talk about that and discuss what we think or hope would happen in future books. And then we had a video where we discussed the entire series, what worked for us, what didn't. I'm really glad we got to start doing some live shows for things that we were buddy reading together because I just love the collaborative community aspect of that. I'm hoping to do that with our current buddy read, which is not a series, it's just a large, chunky standalone, which we've been reading over the course of 2 months. I've been reading it over the course of a week because I can't put it down. But that's a different video's topic. So Protectorate was really fun. I do recommend it to more plot-driven readers. I think it's a fairly accessible sci-fi series. So if you're like, I'm scared of getting into adventure, sci-fi, space opera adjacent things, I think this one's good. I think it's a very mid-weight in almost everything it does in terms of character work, in terms of the balance between characters and plot. It has a lot of familiar tropes, but it also introduces those tropes and subvert them in ways where I don't think you need to have a strong, I've been reading sci-fi forever background to understand what's happening. So yeah, that was really fun. Glad I read that. Glad I have a new author to kind of check out when I'm in that headspace. I also finished Rainwild Chronicles, and I do think this was probably my least series of this quarter. I think it's probably a 3 to 3.5 star series for me, which doesn't mean it's bad. It's just the highlight was the buddy read experience. If I didn't have the buddy read experience, it probably would have maybe been for sure a 3-star series because it was just too long for what it was doing. And I know I hear it all the time in the comments that the publishers made it happen, blah, blah, blah. This is still what I was given. I don't have a director's cut version for me to read. This is it. And I haven't been reading it long enough to know what chapters I can maybe glaze over or skip. There was just a lot of repetition. And then when we were getting to the end, it felt like it went by in a blink of an eye. And I just felt like, well, if we were going to have everything be this long, I would like to have distributed the plot and character moments a little differently. Like, there are some character interactions in the 4th book that could have been introduced in the 3rd book, and we could have cut out the recap in the 3rd book of the 2nd book. Like, I have a lot of internal notes about where I would move things around. But, it's still fun to learn about the Rain Wilds. I always think that's a fascinating part of the world, and it was not bad at all. And it is exploring some themes we just don't get to see a lot in fantasy. It's just, I think it was bloated in a way that made it a little less fun for me. All right, and the other 2 were rereads with new books that came out, and it made me very excited. I do not have a Should You Read for this yet, but I shall in the near future, and that is the Rook and the Rose trilogy. I reread this and read the 3rd book. Oh, it's so good. And the biggest change for this reread, because if you don't know, I've read The Mask of Mirrors like 3 times, is I did the audiobooks primarily, like sometimes immersion reading too, and that was really fun. It took me a little bit to warm up to the idea of this person doing like some of my favorite characters' voices, but honestly, the dialogues, because this is such a cultural driven kind of narrative, we're in this city, and the city has 3 kind of cultural vying things, and then there's other cultures like outside of the city, and each of these cultures have their own accent, and the audio narrator did such a good job with that, and especially with how some of our characters do slip in and out of their own natural accents to the accents they use in their code switching for professional life. I just thought that was done super well by the audio narrator, and that was not something I was bringing to the table when I read it, so that was really cool. I also just think it made the slower bits maybe move at a slightly faster speed with an audiobook, which just made it more enjoyable to me. Not that I mind the slow parts of Rook and Rose. We all know I just love them. And I think that if you like the first 2 books, the 3rd book sticks the landing. I can't really tell who the 3rd book might be like a favorite for versus this was really strong. Like, I think this is a fairly strong series, and I just have a slight favoritism for the 1st book because that's the book that made me love it. And I've read it the most, and it has some of my favorite tropes. Like, I love the mystery of who is the Rook, but I also do love how far we've come by the end of the 3rd book, if that makes sense. The 3rd book itself is almost like 2 or 3 books in one in terms of pacing. It's 3 parts, and each part does feel like you could have had, 3 250-page books sort of thing, like bound together. I don't think they're quite that long. Maybe 200-page books or something like that. And I loved it. I loved it. I love spending time here with these people. I would watch a show on it with these people. I just have a great time with their interactions, with learning about the magic, trying to figure out how are we going to get out of this. I was so tense at times, but in a good way. I was excited. And I'm going to hopefully, I think soon, I'm interviewing the authors of this series to really learn a lot of the inspiration, and that interview should be on the channel in the near future. But yeah, look out for Should You Read for this and an interview. This fan is happy. This fan is happy. I still need to get a copy of that 3rd book. They just haven't had nice ones at my bookstore, and I'm working on it. I'm way too picky about my collection of books. And then the last one I finished is, the 3rd book was The Blue Beautiful World, but this is the Cygnus Betaverse, and I have a Should You Read and an author interview with Karen Lord for this series. I didn't realize I'd had so many author interviews to talk about in this video too, but this was so fun. Rereading The Best of All Possible Worlds and spoiler vlogging that for patrons was amazing. I had thoughts on like every chapter, every 2 chapters, because it's just one of my favorite things, and learning how that book came to be in the interview was really cool. And then the Galaxy game was more rewarding on reread because I actually like understood what it was doing, because on the first read I'm like, I don't really know what's happening. I trust it. I'm here. So kind of knowing was more fun. And then The Blue Beautiful World, some of the reveals, the different angle. It's just a really satisfying project for me to consume. So I will point you to those other videos if you want to know more. And then the only other thing that I like continued but I didn't finish was the Vorkosigan Saga. I read the first full Miles book with Warrior Apprentice, which was a time. There were moments where I'm like, oh, I miss Cordelia, and then there were moments where I'm like, oh my god, I'm so emotional right now. What are you doing to me? But Jewel is just an author that really gets me, I think, in terms of writing character interactions and character moments and payoff and choosing when to condense plot moments and when to have them spaced out. Really excited to get to the Vor game in the near future. And then 2 series that I started. Fourth Wing. I read that one in July. I'm excited for Iron Flame. I have no regrets there. It's exactly what I hoped it would be based off all the reviews I saw, so that was great. And then, I think it's called Mosa and Platy. So this is the Mimicking of Known Successes series by Malka Older, and I definitely want to continue it. I normally don't get along with detective stories, but this one, because of their interactions and their character dynamics, I was eating it up. Like, my least favorite part was the mystery, but it wasn't the forefront anyways. It was like this second chance friendship romance situation, which like is kind of sort of the start of Bones, so we really shouldn't be surprised why this is a connection for me, but excited to be back in Jupiter. I think arcs for that second book are going to be on the horizon, and I might ask for one because I do want to continue that series. So yeah, in terms of TBR for the future, I do want to read more of Rakoskin Saga. As we've discussed, maybe 2 or 3 if I can get them in. We'll see. I like physically reading these, and my physical reading time is not as high as it used to be. So I don't know if that means I'll cave and listen to the audiobooks, or if I'm just going to read 1 or 2. We'll see. But for sure, I'd want to read the Vor game. For sure. Fourth Wing, yeah, I'm reading Iron Flame when that comes out. That's not even a question in my mind. I'm going to try and get it as soon as I can from the library. So I guess that's my limiting factor, is when can I get it from the library? Because I'm not spending $17 on an ebook. Nope, not doing that. And I already talked about that for Mimicking of Known Successes, the sequel. If I can get an arc, maybe I'll read it this fall or winter. If not, I'll just read it when it comes out. But, if I have access, I wouldn't mind continuing that novella series. And then in terms of other stuff that I have on my TBR, I know it's a joke at this point. Truly, I do. But I might actually pick this up next, which means it could very well be happening, and that is Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. And I know, it's been on so many videos. But I really want to read it, so I don't want it to just not be in a video. And like I said, I do think, right now I've been reading this really chunky horror. I'm thinking maybe this kind of middle ground between fantasy and romance might be where my brain wants to be next, because I just watched like a romance TV show, and the previous weekend I read a contemporary romance. So I think I still kind of like the comfort of romance, but I don't know if I need like a straight romance book right now. So that could happen. Regardless, putting it on the TBR. Fitz and the Fool is for sure happening. We're going to start that buddy read in October, and so I'm finishing Realm of the Elderling this year. That's wild. And then Malazan, with where life's at, I still want to put this here, but I'm not going to force it. If it happens, it's great. And if it doesn't, life is happening right now, and I'm not going to let Malazan make me feel guilty for it. I'll get there when I get there. I need brain to read that series, and I don't know how much brain I'm going to have. It's truly where I'm at. And then the last 2, I was looking at series that I wanted to start in 2023. Which ones have I gotten to? Which ones I haven't? And these were the 2 where I'm like, maybe it can happen. And so War Child is, I think, higher on my list. I actually think there are new-ish covers out. So War Child, I would really like to try, and Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. Those are the 2 that I think might be series that I want to start-ish. We'll see. We'll see. I think this is manageable, and obviously things will happen. I'll do whatever strikes my fancy, and I have plenty of like TBR books I want to read, but they're just not in the series right now. But what is exciting is because I've been wrapping up so many things, I really feel like I'm going to go into 2024 with like a really nice clean slate, which is quite exciting. How are your series doing? How do you keep track or accountable for yourself? This is how I do it every quarter. And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave fire for Iron Flame, because that's the first thing I thought of right now. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.